Okay, this is 1.6 of algebra. Alrighty, when we're multiplying real numbers, when we multiply two numbers that have different signs, our answer is always negative. And you can see the model on the number line here of 2 times negative 3. So I have 2 negative 3's, which gives me negative 6. When we multiply two numbers with the same sign, we get a positive answer. So if we multiply two positive numbers together, we get a positive number. And if we multiply two negative numbers, we get a positive number. Okay, so let's just jump down to the got it and give this a try ourselves. So A, 6 times negative 15. Since they have different signs, my answer is going to be negative. 6 times negative 15 gives me negative 90. B, I'm multiplying two positive numbers, 12 times 0.2, so I'm going to get a positive answer, and my answer is 2.4. C, multiplying fractions. When we multiply fractions, we multiply the top numbers and we multiply the bottom numbers. Since I have a negative fraction and a positive fraction, my answer is going to be negative. And then I'll get 7 times 3 on the top, 10 times 5 on the bottom. I get negative 21 over 50. If a number would go into the top number and into the bottom number, so like let's say I could divide the top number by 2 and I could divide the bottom number by 2. I need to divide to get to the simplest fraction I can. I can't divide this one by anything, so my answer is negative 21 over 50. And then D, I have negative 4 squared. Well, negative 4 squared is the same thing as negative 4 times negative 4. Two negatives make a positive, so this is 16. Okay, and then simplifying square root expressions. So let's just start with our got it problems. A, the square root of 64. The square root of 64 is 8. Now B, there's a plus and a minus in front of this answer, which means I need to find the square root of 16, and then my answer is going to be positive of that number and negative of that number. So I'm going to have two answers. So if I ignore my plus and minus out front and just pay attention to the square root of 16, the square root of 16 is 4. And then I stick the plus and minus out front. So my answers are positive 4 and negative 4. You could also write this separately, 4 and negative 4, but we use the plus and minus symbol here just to be quicker. C, I'm going to ignore the negative out front and just pay attention to the square root of 121. The square root of 121 is 11. And then I stick the symbol out front. So there's a negative out front, so this is negative 11. The square root of 121 is not negative 11. The square root of 121 is 11, but then I stick the negative out front. And D, I have the plus and minus again. So once I get my answer, I'm going to stick plus and minus out front. And the square root of 1 over 36 is 1/6, and I stick the plus and minus out. Remember, with all of these, you can just type into your calculator square root of 1 over 36, and it'll give you a 1/16, or it'll give you the decimal, and that's fine too. Okay, when I divide numbers with different signs, my answer is negative. When I divide numbers with the same sign, my answer is positive. So a positive divided by a positive is a positive, and a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And if I picture that in fraction form, negative 20 over negative 5, these two negatives turn into positives. They cancel each other out. So then I get 20 over 5, which is 4. I can divide 0 by something. So I can do 0 divided by 8. That gives me 0. I can do 0 divided by 100. That gives me 0. If I have 0 apples and I split it among some number of people, everyone gets 0. What I can't do is I cannot divide by 0. I cannot do 8 divided by 0. That does not work. That is not possible. If you try to type that into your calculator, it'll give you an error. So I can't do 100 divided by 0. I can't do 1,256 divided by 0. I won't get an answer. Okay. A skydiver's elevation changes by negative 3,600 feet in 4 minutes after the parachute opens. What is the average change in the skydiver's elevation each minute? When we want average, that's telling us to divide. So I do negative 3,600 divided by 4, and I get negative 900. And remember, a negative divided by a positive gives me a negative. Okay, let's try our got it problem here. You make 5 withdrawals of equal amounts from your bank account. The total amount you withdraw is $360. What is the change in your bank account balance each time you make a withdrawal? So I am going to do 360 divided by 5. And if I'm doing a positive divided by a positive, I'm going to get a positive answer. And my answer is $72. So each time I make a withdrawal, my account changes by $72. I'm taking out $72 each time. Okay, the inverse property of multiplication. For every non-zero real number a, there is a multiplicative inverse, 1 over a, such that a times 1 over a equals 1. So let's say a equals 3, then the multiplicative inverse is 1 over 3, because 3 times 1 over 3 is the same thing as 3 over 1 times 1 over 3, right? 3 divided by 1 is just 3. And then when I multiply across, I get 3 over 3, which is the same thing as 1. The reciprocal of a fraction, if the fraction is a over b, the reciprocal is b over a. We just flip the fraction. And when we divide fractions, so if we look over here, a divided by b, a over b is divided by c over d is the same thing as a over b multiplied by d over c. And this is showing us why this works. If you want, come and ask me to explain this in person. This isn't something I can easily explain via video. But basically, when we're dividing fractions, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So a over b divided by c over d is the same thing as a over b times, and now I flip that second fraction, d over c. Okay, so let's practice. So for a, I have 3/4 divided by negative 5/2. This is the same thing. My first fraction stays the same, and then I change it to multiplying, and then I flip my other fraction. So it's still negative, and this becomes 2/5. Now I can multiply straight across. Positive times a negative is going to give me a negative. And then 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 5 is 20. And I can simplify this fraction because I can divide the top number and the bottom number by 2. So if I divide the top number by 2, I get 3. If I divide the bottom number by 2, I get 10. And then it says, is 3/4 divided by negative 5/2, what we just did, equivalent to negative 3/4 divided by 5/2? Well, over here to the side up top here, I'm going to do negative 3/4 divided by 5/2. So 3/4, and then I change it to multiplication and flip over this fraction. Still negative. I'm going to multiply across the top. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 5 is 20. This is negative 6 over 20. And then again, I can simplify it to be negative 3/10, and I get the same answer. So yes, it is. Alrighty, and here is our lesson check. So number 1, I have negative 3 times negative 12. Two negative numbers multiplied together make a positive. So this is going to be 36. 2, I have a positive times a negative, so my answer is going to be negative. And I'm multiplying fractions, so I'm going to multiply straight across. 5 times 2 is 10. 8 times 8 is 64. Don't forget that this is negative, because that comes from my negative 2/8. And then I can divide the top and the bottom by 2, so I get negative, and then 5 over 32. And then 3, some division problems for us. Negative 48 divided by 3 gives me negative divided by a positive gives me a negative 16. And then 4, dividing some fractions here, I have negative 9/10 divided by negative 4/5. So remember, I keep my first fraction the same, and then I multiply and flip that second fraction. So 5 over 4. Negative times a negative is going to give me a positive, and then I multiply across on the top. So 9 times 5 gives me 45. And 10 times 4 gives me 40. 5 goes into each of these, so I can divide by 5. 45 divided by 5 gives me 9. 40 divided by 5 gives me 8. My answer is 9/8. If I look at number 5 here, what is the reciprocal of negative 1/5? Remember, the reciprocal is just when we flip the fraction. So it'll still be negative, but it'll be negative 5 over 1, excuse me, which is the same thing as negative 5. And that's all we're going to do. Here is your homework.